Hi, my name is Rev Amina McIntyre, president of the Connection Young Adult Ministry. Many of you may or may not know that I am also a playwright and also a budding screenwriter. What it means is that I write plays for theaters and for the stage, but I also write screenplays that are filmed for the big screen. I do have a couple short films that I've done some work on, and I'm actually working on larger screenplays as we speak. And so Reverend Collins asked me to come and kind of share a little bit of knowledge about how we can have our conversations about God and the work that we're doing and actually take God to this big screen by using screenplays, by doing some particular worship and looking at how we can make short films that talk about Christ's story and the Bible in general in all of our work. So hope you're ready because we're gonna first walk through some things about the theater and screenwriting, and then I'm gonna challenge you all to look at how you might be able to write your own. So first of all, taking God to the screen, to the big screen. First, I want to talk about the what. So, we are talking specifically in this piece about short films or episodes for worship or larger ministry. So, what do I mean by short films? We're talking films that might be 5 to 10 minutes at the most. You could do something a little longer, like 30 if you're trying to do like some episodic TV kind of things. But for the most part, we're talking about a film that is within 5 minutes, having a complete beginning, middle, and end to the story, and really kind of capturing an entire moment with the particular story. In that particular time. And so this is particularly good because you can use it for regular worship. You can use it if there's a particular sermon that someone wants to have enhanced. It can be a way of retelling the scripture and telling a full story around the scripture, or it can just be a standalone story that would be good for us to just know and be able to think about God in a different kind of way. I think sometimes when we're thinking about short films, they think about them in isolation of the church, and the short films for church very often kind of feel as if they don't really deal with real life, and they can seem a little superficial. But I want us to think about in this particular workshop how we can do both. How is it that we can actually have full real life stories? How can we do some other exciting events? How do we also, but at the same time, how can we also make sure that we are also including God in this work? Now, one of the things I will tell you is that regardless of what we're doing, screenwriting is screenwriting. Structure is structure. And so we're really going to kind of talk about some short film techniques and some structures that will help you tremendously to really kind of work with and write your particular story. So if you're ready for me, then let's go ahead. First things here, I do want to show you all what a screenwriting script is. This is something that when you are writing a screenplay, this is typically what the script looks like. If you notice at the top, it'll say something about fading in. You kind of see here with the internal and the external, kind of if it's inside or outside. That is super important for filming of, for especially designating for filming, so that it gives people an idea of where they'll be when they're filming. You'll notice that there's some action spots here. The very first line, there's action. In the middle, you'll see kind of the dialogue for the characters, things like that. And you kind of see some other information that goes along with it. So the goal is to be able to write a very basic, very streamlined kind of short screenplay that may also be something that you can put up in your church or that you can actually film in your church. There's a lot of moving parts. We're just going to talk about some of the basics today. We're talking about getting the story right and getting those things together, because I think those are the most important parts before you can film anything at all. Filming and how to actually put it up on his feet is a totally different conversation, but it's all right. We're going to stay in the step that we're in for today. So now that we've dealt with the what we're doing, let's talk about who can be involved. So anyone in your church can be involved and can help. A lot of times we think that, and I'm a playwright and I've been on film sets and I've done different things. It's not as if no one in this world can do it. I do think that there are things that, especially when you're filming for church, you can actually widen the amount of people who are interested or the amount of people who are doing the work. Now, you will not want to have like a director who's kind of experienced. We all have seen good and bad acting. We know what that is. We all can tell a good or a bad plot or a good or bad story. But the other thing is that we also know that you might need to have somebody who can tell you some information about lights, or tell you some information about sound, or tell you information about how to deal with costuming. But one of the things that I will bet you, and this is one of the things that I have learned as I have done theater work, is that most times, often than not, there are people in your church who have had these experiences, and very often we just haven't talked to them about what those experiences are. What do I mean by that? So, very when I started putting up plays in my church, I realized that we were having such a hard time, and I mean a hard time, figuring out how to do costuming. But then all of a sudden, there were people in the audience who were like, hey, I really sew. And I've been sewing for years. And I've sewn my own clothes, and I've sewn clothes for other people. And so next thing we know, we had people either picking out patterns or designing clothes for us for the particular set. There are people in your church who probably have done something very similar. There are people in my church who are like, well, I'll donate my time as someone who does makeup. I'll donate my time as someone who has done choreography. Within our churches, we very typically have people who already know how to do it. And even if you don't, then it's a great time to, which is the second thing I want to do, is talk about reaching out into the community. Into the community, finding friends in the community, finding new people who might want to be involved in the process, who might be willing to learn if you don't know, or who might be willing to do some research to figure out how to do the work. But one of the things I can tell you is that no screenplay or no screenwriting endeavor is none of them are in isolation. None of them are done by themselves. Like, you literally, and I mean literally, cannot write a screenplay of any kind of sort in any way, shape, or form if you are doing it by yourself, because you can't hold the camera and direct and act at the same time. So if you can't do all those things at the same time, then why wouldn't you just get a community, right? You got to do it. And most of the times, and most when I was your ages, I absolutely, without a doubt, would always have a group of people that I could call for a lot of different things, and we always would get in trouble together and do things together. I mean, even if I was a partial learner, most times there were people I could call, and we can get into some trouble together if we needed to. And so this is basically good trouble in a lot of different ways, because you're trying to figure out how to do things with the show. And for the church, the next thing I want you to remember is it is okay, absolutely, to bring in the Bible. What does that mean? So you got to bring in the Bible. If we are doing a play for the church, bring the Bible, and it doesn't have to be by directly quoting or directly having a baptism. I mean, if it furthers the story, great. But the biggest thing is, and the coolest thing is for you to know, is that the Bible is really nice. It's got all kinds of quick and dirty, crazy stories in it that you can absolutely adapt. I promise you, I'm actually writing a screenplay, or a kind of a pilot for a series that I want to write. It's called The Real Households of Genesis, and basically looking at how the Genesis households, especially Jacob's family, had a lot of really, really Real Housewives of Atlanta kind of thing going on in there. And when I tell you that it is so interesting to just see, oh shoot, the Bible is really that interesting. Yes, the Bible is really that interesting and crazy. And so it is really important for you to really kind of read the Bible and see what's in there, and just say, you know what, this is kind of interesting. This is kind of quick and dirty. Okay, there we go. So bringing in the Bible into the story is actually the easiest fix, because there's literally nothing that's going on in the world right now that has not happened in the Bible. And the more you read, the more interesting you'll find some of the stories, and you'll be lying wondering, who were these people who were supposed to be holy in this Bible? I promise you, it gets real interesting. The last thing is bringing your interest. What do you like? When you go to the movies, what kind of films do you like to watch? When you are at home reading, what kind of things do you like to do? Do you like to play games? What kind of games do you like to play? How can that be brought into the story that you're trying to tell? I can assure you that if you're playing basketball, we've all seen movies that deal with basketball. It is important for us to be willing to bring our interests and fuse it with the Bible and really kind of talk about it. There's literally nothing at this point that I think that you can do that will counteract, or will mess up, or will do some sort of counteract, or mess up, or will make it so that things aren't interesting for a viewer to see while they are while they are watching your particular story, so long as it's a really good story. I keep talking about this element of what a good story is. And so let's talk a little bit about how this is going to roll, right? This will be the bulk of our conversation today because I want you all to also take some time out to do some things. We're going to talk about short scripting here, right? Short scripting is very important because when you go and you are doing filming, it's fine if you do some improvisation, but for the most part, with you doing improvisation, you're absolutely going to, and I think this is very important to tell, like you're absolutely going to, at the end of the day, have a script of some sort. You're going to want to know what the beginning, middle, and end is. You're going to want to know what the things are. You're going to know what the overtures are. This is very, very important to know. And so I do think that you have to kind of know some of the basics. And so we're going to take kind of quick and dirty, but I do want you all to kind of sit down and really think these things out and take some action time out within this. And if you are, and I know this is broadcasting through CYYAC, if you are able to pause this conversation and do some of the stuff while you do it, make sure that you go to the handout, go ahead and follow me along and write the things out as we go. And it's absolutely okay to take a little bit of time and to think through some things because screenwriting in particular is very technical and the best ones have some really well thought out plans. So, are y'all ready? Okay, here we go. So, when you are first thinking about a story, you want to talk about what story you want to write. What is the story that you want to write? Can you tell me in one sentence what the story is about? And so, but when I'm thinking about one story, what you want to think about is you want to think about what is the name of the main character? Who are they or what is their main problem? What is it that they want? And what is the most pressing obstacle that's happening? So when you're writing a line about a story, you're writing what we call a log line. And the log line is what follows you throughout the course of everything. But what it is that is literally like one sentence, maybe two, but you really try to keep it down to one that really kind of tells us the entire trajectory of the movie that you're writing by within one sentence. So tell me, what story do you want to write? For example, I'm writing a play right now about about her name is Joy. She's a 400-year-old woman who has been left behind by a lot of her friends when they flew away, and today they came back to get her. What it is that she has to decide whether or not she's going to go with them. But when she does, it opens up a full world where she has to really deal with the previous life that she lived, as well as how she can maybe live today and also maybe possibly save the world. That's it. It's not as much of a polished log line, but you get the idea. You really want to keep your the name of the person is Joy. Who they are is she's a 400-year-old woman who looks like she's 40. I didn't say that in my log line, but I typically do when I pitch it. The next thing is this is someone who she wants to be a part of the community, but the community that she was a part of left her behind. So she wants to be part of the community and she has an opportunity to be a part of the community, but she's realizing that the opportunity that she's having to be a part of the community may not be all she cracked it up to be, because in fact it may lead to a much larger adventure and she's got to decide whether or not she wants to do it. The question is, do you want to see a conversation like that? Absolutely. And since Joy is actually an angel whose wings were clipped, there's a lot of different things that I'm going to be talking about um in terms of the Middle Passage in slavery and how she's been here and how she's been a Black woman in America for the past 400 years and how she's endured. But now all of a sudden there is this need for her to come back to the heavens and to fight this fight. And so it gives us a totally different world to kind of talk about. I tell people all the time, it's kind of got like a matrixy feel to it. So there's a lot of different things that kind of come about. And so for me, there will be fight scenes in it. Yes, there will be fight scenes. And it is a conversation about angels, and it is a conversation about the Bible, and it is a conversation about religion in that particular sense. It may not necessarily, to be fair, be in this work, but it's absolutely okay. I think it'll work for the things that we're trying to do. So, and so the next thing is to choose your genre and style of the story. So there are different genres. We know inspirational, horror, or comedy or romantic, or styles of the story. They might want to have the buddy story or the hero story, or different kinds of things. You might also want to think about the length of your story. If it's short, make it short. If it's episodic, make it episodic. On YouTube, there are thousands of short films that are 10 minutes or less, or episodes that are 10 minutes or less, and they go with what they're doing. And there's also full length, which are the ones that you see in the show. And for us, Save the Cat by Blake Snyder is super important for that particular conversation. We are all very sensitive to our particular stories. There's every single genre in the Bible already. We think about inspirational, we automatically most times think about Christ and the story of how Christ has saved us. We might also think about the Exodus story and how the people of Israel were saved and moved out of Egypt and out of slavery. If you want to think about horror, you can automatically go to the book of Revelation. You could also think about the Noah story and how that has played out. When you think about comedy, you can think about the fact that there are times where people are arguing in the Bible. Like at one point, the disciples are arguing over who's the best disciple. Like, what kind of story? I mean, can you imagine what kind of conversation is coming out of that idea that these persons are arguing over who is a better disciple and who is closer to Christ? I think there's some comedy here. And romance, obviously, we have Jacob and Rachel. We have Adam and Eve, I think, is some sort of romantic. It's a very different kind of romantic, interesting. But if you are under a certain age, there's one particular book that's all about the romance. It's the Song of Songs. And it is is very beautiful, very poetic. But if you're under a certain age, I would talk to your whoever your parent or whoever your guardian might possibly be, to have the conversation with them about what all is in the Song of Songs. I would also offer too a different kind of romantic story is talking about the story between Joseph and Mary, and what kind of marriage they must have had, and what kind of romance they probably had to have after the coming of Christ, after the birth of Christ, knowing that Christ was the child of God, and how that all worked, especially in their particular culture at that time. There are also kinds of styles of stories, like there's a buddy story, there's a hero story. All of these stories are talked about in Blake Snyder's Save the Cat. I highly recommend this particular book, especially if you're interested in going deep, wanting to go deep into um, different kinds of screenwriting, because these particular kinds of stories, like if you have a hero, the hero is someone who is trying to find who they are, who is maybe coming to terms with their particular powers and having to save the world and what that means for them. And they probably have to kind of go through the ebbs and flows of that. You have the coming of age stories where people are starting to try to figure out how to overcome and to become the full person that they are. You have the buddy story, which is typically two friends, or also can be two lovers in that particular case, and talking about their kind of relationship and the relationship over the course of it. But Blake Snyder does a really good job of making it very easy to understand. I know you all are younger, but if you all are interested in this, I'd highly recommend this particular book, as it's actually very accessible and is written very, very well for a beginning kind of person. And also, too, you want to remember the length of story. So, why is the length of story important? If you want to make sure that you can tell whatever your whole story and your whole concept in a short time. So you don't want to do a large, robust, 10 different, like 20, 50 different scenes, 100 different scenes in a 5-minute video, because it's just going to take too much. Keep it much simpler. It does not mean though that you can't like show, like, post pictures together and merge those things. It doesn't mean that you can't do a bunch of other different things to kind of manipulate it. You also want to think about whether or not it's going to have episodes. If you're going to have a lot of live action. So if it's going to be episodic, think about YouTube. There are a lot of different YouTube series. Matter of fact, for people, and I know you all are younger, but Issa Rae actually had a YouTube series before she had Insecure. The YouTube series, all of the series things are under 10 minutes. Every last one of the episodes are under 10 minutes, but they all told a specific story in a short time frame, and that was super important. And the episodes are all very interesting, and they build on one another. And there are other people who do the same kinds of things. There are influencers and TikTokers, and oftentimes will tell different kinds of stories in a short time frame. And so also think about when you think about length of story, a full length story is not necessarily what we're trying to do here, but we're talking like 2-3 hour kind of films, like 90 minutes. a 2 hours, 3 hours kind of a film, when we're thinking about full length kinds of conversations. So do keep in mind that that's the kind of length that you're doing. But you, regardless of what you do, you're gonna have a beginning, middle, and end. And I will also say too, and well, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but like, I mean, but also too, remember that like you can tell a story on TikTok. And we all know that TikTok has stories. You can tell a story in 1 minute. So what would you want to tell in 1 minute if you could create your story on TikTok? If you just had your cell phone, you don't want to use up all your memory. What can you tell in that short amount of time? But you want to make sure that it is a full, regardless of what it is, that it is a full story. And that is the most important. And a full story has a beginning, middle, and end. It has a very good arc. But we'll talk about that arc in a second. We'll talk about the Snyder Beat sheet. So that brings us to writing your beats out. So we talked about making sure you know what your story is, writing your one-liner out, knowing who the person is that we're following and what they're doing. And it can be an ensemble of people, but if it's an ensemble of people, you also have to know, oh, this group of friends is stuck here during when they all have in school detention for the day, and this is what their day is like. They have to decide how they're going to get out of in school detention, or how their lives are inevitably going to change by having that. There's an old movie called The Breakfast Club in the 1980s that really basically follows that same premise. And so you have to really kind of think about that sort of thing. All good screenplays are about beat and structure and story. And no matter how long or how short, these beats matter. I will tell you for certain that we've all seen a movie that we didn't think was good. And very often it's either we didn't like the actor in it, or the story didn't make sense somehow. It doesn't matter what age you are. There are some things you're just like, oh, I like that story, or I didn't like that story. And these are the reasons why. And this is what's missing. But very often, if you walk through the beats and you really walk through the structure, then you can kind of make the beats and the structure work for you a little earlier, and you can understand. If you make the beats and the structure work, then very often your film will be a little bit better. And so before we go into the zoom in on it, I do want to note that screenplays do have a particular format. You can write your beats out inside of the format that you do have. I mean, inside of these programs here, but like something like indie.tools is a free version. Final Draft is what the professionals use. It is paid, but there is a 3-month kind of student thing, especially if you're in undergrad or something and you're learning to write. Celtics, which I tend to use quite a bit, there is a cheaper version. It's cheaper than Final Draft, but now I think you actually have to pay for Celtics more. I have the one that's still on my computer till I upgrade. But either way, these are all kind of that sheet that we saw at the very beginning. It'll kind of make it so that you don't have to do all that writing out yourself and trying to do all the spacing yourself. You can kind of figure it out one-on-one as you go along. So I do want us to go into the Snyder Beat sheet though for a second, because being able to have his larger idea is to have 40 beats, but we're doing a short film. We don't actually need to have all 40 of those particular beats and scenes. It just kind of helps you flash it out. But I do want us to talk about what is there and what you can do. Oh, and it still didn't do it. Oh man, why didn't it do it this time? Oh, okay. Let me see if I can get in closer. There we go. I'm so glad that I was able to do that, because it was supposed to just do it for us. Gotta love technology. So here's the outline. And this is the handout that you all do have, so that you all will be able to follow along. But you want to be able to write your name. You want to write your name, obviously. Make sure you keep your idea. And hold on to your idea. Films do make a lot of money. People do steal stuff. So hold on to it. Make sure your name is on it. Keep it, hold it down, and do your own copywriting. Write a title of some sort. It is important, even if it's a working title, to write a title of some sort. Write a log line. So write the log line, which is the one sentence that we're talking about. I know it only has like one line here. I might put another line in there before you all get that. The why me. Why are you writing the story? This is actually very important. So typically when you're writing a short film, you won't have to do that in this case. You are pitching it, but you want to be aware of why you are the best person to write this particular film. But I think in a short film, even if it's just for your church, why do you care? Why are you the best person to write it? Why don't you just get someone else in the room to write it for you? And that is extremely important, is to know the why of this particular element. And that is so and if we were in the room, I'd ask you all why you want to write, to tell me about your log line, and to write and tell me why you are the best person to write this particular story. That is super important, to be very interested. Really write it for your interests, and be very in tune and writing about the things that you really want. So let's talk about these things very quickly. And this is Blake Snyder's. So as I mentioned before, he can kind of walk through all of those things for you. There's some other different kinds of structural things, but I promise you this is probably the easiest one if you're trying to walk through it. So the first thing is the opening image. What is the very first thing that we see? And it can be very quick, but what's the very first opening image that we might have and we see? What is the theme? Typically around one of the other characters kind of talks about, hey, this is a theme. So you might want to have like a line in there in your script about, hey, this is basically what we want people to get out of it. If it is if we're talking about, I don't know, Jonah and the whale, and we're writing a short film about Jonah and the whale, the story might be, hey, the theme might be, sometimes you have to do what you don't want to do because it's what God wants, and that's the theme of the story. So you want to think about kind of a theme that someone will say maybe to that particular character, kind of early in the film, so we know kind of what the story is about, and what we're doing. So then you kind of do on the setup. The setup is just a couple little like maybe, especially for short films, maybe like a minute of what the problem is going to be, and the catalyst then is what's going to interrupt the regular flow of the day. Like, who is the catalyst, what happens, what particular event happens, and it makes it so that this story starts to become propelled forward and we go into it. Very typically your protagonist does not accept whatever has happened at first, and so you'll probably have to kind of negotiate back and forth and say, hey, my main character doesn't like this, but what are their renderings? And it's great if we can see that kind of play out on stage and out on screen. The break into two is when you, once the character is kind of said, you know what, this is what the story is going to be, it kind of propels you forward into whatever the next part of it is. It's like, for example, if you've seen The Matrix, is the time at which Neo actually has accepted what's happening, and it is able to actually go into the world of the Matrix and see what's all going on. And the Matrix actually has a lot of very Christian connotations, which is why I bring the Matrix up quite a bit. But it's like that for any story. The B story is if they maybe a new friendship starts or a romance starts or something like that. In a short film, you probably won't have a whole bunch of B story, but you will have a small one. Then there'll be kind of fun and games. So they'll just kind of be going back and forth. Things are happening, living up this world. You want to always be very aware of what's happening in the very middle of the thing, so that everything that you're doing from here on out, especially in a short film, has to be very, very much about you getting your character to the end of the story and them to face whatever it is that they want to face. Um, Typically, there is always someone who is trying to stop the protagonist. So there's a point at which the antagonist or the person who is probably their biggest obstacle has to look like they're about to win, and there also has to be where they get close to winning. And there's got to be a point at which the person who is against it kind of starts to lose all hope, and things have to go down. I mean, it has to. That's just part of how stories work. And it's not exactly a great story if it doesn't have at least some things that makes you think, well, maybe that they won't win, because who wants to watch a story where we know the protagonist is only going to win and they don't have anything to work for it? No one wants to watch that. So make sure that they do that. The dark night of the soul is the moment that the protagonist has to be like, wow, they have to make a decision. Okay, do I move forward after this? This is really, this crazy thing is really happening, but can I move forward? How can I move forward? And the dark night of the soul is the point at which that happens. The next thing is breaking into three, kind of like breaking into two. Typically is when you go back to the original part, and breaking into two, or the scene or the place where things all worked out. And you want to, when you're thinking about breaking into three, is when the person who we're following is really empowered to be like, yes, we're going to fix this. This is going to go down. This is going to really, really make it. They might go back to the scene of whatever the fight is. And so the finale, the finale is really the final scene where they kind of, if it's a fight scene, this is the major fight scene. If it's the climax of a love story or a romance, then it is the height of the romantic story. This is where all the things happen, and this is where you kind of get the end of the story itself. And then at the very end, you get your final image, similar to the opening image. It's just a particular thing that we land on at the end. I know it seems like a lot, but I'm actually going to send you all to some, and I'm gonna try to see if I can play one here. um so this is a pretty short film. It is not looking like it's going to play, but I will have the link for it. I'm also going to send you all a couple Netflix films that you can watch too, that can play, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm going to send you all a lot of animated things, because I know you all are used to certain things, but in animation is also very, very clear too. And you kind of want to make sure that you do it, but all of these things kind of work for the gospel as well. So just remember that we're just doing we're actually really just doing some larger storytelling. So it's your turn. Write you a log line, make you some beats, write your story, and film it. If you have some questions about how to film it, we could talk about how to film it on your cell phone. We could talk about different things you might want to do, lights, sound, that kind of stuff. But for the first things first that you need to do when you're thinking about it is you want to get your story right. This has been Amina McIntyre, Reverend Amina McIntyre, the president of Connection Young Adult Ministry, and also playwright, screenwriter. And it's been fun hanging out with you all.